The March 16, 2026 Auburn City Council workshop will be called to order. Two items related to the budget tonight. One will be the review of public safety, and the second is a 5-year CIP. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I'll ask the chiefs to come up. Really, this just gives you a good opportunity to have a conversation with the chiefs regarding the budget request. For the public, I know you all know this, but for the public, the directive by the council was to present a budget that was adding no new services and maintaining what we currently provide. Couple things within the budgets for the public safety that you'll see. One is that the command unit within police negotiated their contract, settled their contract last year. So what you see in the budget for them, it would be the increase in salary for FY25. I'm sorry, for FY26, and what the proposed is for FY27. So you're getting 2 years. And that's the same thing that you see in fire. Fire also negotiated settled their contract last year. So now this budget reflects that FY26 increase for a much larger unit. The command unit is not as large as the fire unit. And so it reflects that increase as well as what we already know their increase to be for FY27. So that's really what you're seeing within this budget. And the remaining item within fire is that in FY26, the council approved adding the third ambulance for 6 months of that fiscal year. So which just recently started. So what you're seeing in the FY27 proposed budget is that remaining 6 months for the full, now it's a full year funded service. So those are really the three drivers within the budget. The chiefs are here to answer any questions you have. Chiefs, I don't know if there's anything you would like to add, but feel free to do that, and then we'll answer questions from the council.
The only thing I'd just elaborate a little bit on the city manager's comments. With regard to the wage, as he said, we were negotiating last year during budget time, so there was nothing built into that last year's approved budget. For us, that was 4%. And then this year, the contract has an additional 3.5, equivalent to 3.5%. It's 3 plus 1 in the second 6 months. So that's about a 7.5% difference between last year's approved budget and this year's in wage. And we just tried to maintain, based on direction and guidance, in trying to maintain and control costs in other areas to set that off. And have less than that 7.5% total increase. With regard to the third rescue, as the city manager said, we had that funded for 6 months last year. What we've done is, within our existing employee base, we've hired an employee to do that. So rather than having that third rescue staffed, as you remember, it was just during peak hours, 40 hours a week during our peak hours, rather than having that staffed with overtime with 2 individuals for that. In order to minimize those costs, we've changed our staffing model a little bit, and we've hired somebody to do one of those positions on straight time rather than on overtime. A way of, again, helping us maintain that cost change with that program continuing for a full year rather than 6 months.
Thank you. As far as excuse me, the police budget is concerned, as the city manager reflected, the only increase that we had in our budget was approximately that 4.1% increase due to the command contractual issues. All of the line items were flatlined from last year. So this is a bare bones budget to maintain the essential services that we provide. There's no extra in the budget.
So council, I think this is the first time you're getting into departments, and just for our new council, really the budget process is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're gonna bring pieces to you. Those budget numbers are gonna continue to evolve as our conversation happens, as we fine tune things. We're constantly working through some of those numbers now, But we'll get to this by the end of the month where you'll have a full plan. But for right now, for these two departments, this is their number. Nothing's changing here. These are locked-in numbers based on the initial directive that was given, and that's no new services, continue services as we currently exist for the city. So happy to answer questions. There's, for every department, there's some nuances to them. For fire, if you make certain changes, that has an impact on revenue, because it certainly does as it pertains to revenue that we bring in regarding EMS services. So we bring just over 1.7 million in revenue for EMS services. If changes happen with the amount of service we can provide, that would change that revenue. So as we go through these, and again, like this is our first one we're having this conversation, we'll talk through some of those revenue impacts, but you will have a full presentation on revenue, and we'll dig into that further. We'll go through more detail on that, but we'll talk about that as you might have questions or you might have recommendations. We'll talk about what some of those impacts would be as well. The chiefs will certainly talk about impacts with their delivery of service. So open the floor up for conversations, Mayor.
Questions from the council? Council Platt.
Thank you, Chiefs. I have a question for both of you guys. I'm curious what you guys use in your industry as like a KPI to measure calls per employee hour. Like, how do we measure that? And how's Auburn's departments, police and fire, how are we trending in those regards? I know that the general theme is that there's more calls than there used to be, right? So I'm just curious if you could educate the council a little bit on how you guys measure those, and where does Auburn fit, again, with the trend, but also like state averages?
Yeah, I can start. There's a couple of metrics that we monitor. I wouldn't say that any one of them is the explicit golden nugget for what we look at. But one that we monitor is our response times, and those are most negatively impacted by duplication of calls at the same time. And so we try to trend. We're looking for an average response time of around 6 minutes. That's the national average. We trend just slightly within seconds higher of that. That was really shown well on our ISO evaluation, where we scored a 2 on our ISO score, showed that we have a strong response model based on where our assets are distributed around the city and our staffing levels. But what affects that a lot, and as our call volume has gone up, is, for example, our EMS calls. When we have both of our EMS units tied up on an emergency and we now have to call mutual aid and have an ambulance come from Lewiston or Poland or wherever it might be, that drives that average response time up. So that's one of the things we look at. And that was one of the precipitating factors in us bringing on the third ambulance during those peak hours. And then with regard to unit utilization, if you will, that's really a metric that is hard to have a national benchmark. In a lot of cases, the national benchmark for ambulance unit utilization is around 27 to 30% of their time active on EMS calls in the phase from the time that they respond until they're back in the station. We're running in the low 20s right now, and the reason that that's a difficult comparison is because our EMS units are also fire suppression units, right? They don't strictly do EMS. And so maintaining the training levels for fire and all of those types of things tends to take up a lot of the day as well. And so doing a direct apples to apples comparison, we monitor it and we measure it. It's just hard to measure us against that baseline of strictly EMS providing units, if that helps.
And on the police side, we average about 28,000 calls for service a year, and that averages to about 90 to 100 per day. For a city of our size, you also have to consider that not only is our population about 25,000, that population, daytime population, grows to 100 to 150,000 because we're a service center for the area. So with that increased commuter traffic, that's bringing more car accidents, more issues at industrial and retail locations as far as theft calls. So we try to measure on where those are happening, and depending on what beat that officer is assigned to, typically the 101 beat or what's called the north beat is a lot of Center Street retail district area. They're probably the busiest throughout the day. So when we have enough officers, we'll create what we call a cover car that will go up and assist those beats with those calls for service. Our minimum staffing during the day is 4 officers and a supervisor. And our patrol teams are staffed at 6 when we're fully staffed at 6 officers per patrol team. So we're allowed to use those extra officers as those cover cars help try to minimize the workload for each officer.
I think Councilor Platts makes a good point that I'll just also mention is that if, in comparison, so if you were to look at other municipalities and you were to maybe just take the flat number of what they have in their budget, I'd really encourage you not to do that. If there's some specific details you'd like from another community, we'll work on getting that. But there's so many different variables when it comes to municipalities' budgets. You might be comparing with a municipality that includes fringe or benefits in their department budgets. We don't do that. We also, the cost for the facilities for the fire department, they're not built into the fire department's budget. We have a facilities budget. So the utilities for those 3 buildings that the fire chief manages, you won't find that in his budget. Some other departments, other municipalities, you might see within the police department, they might have a 911 center. That's the 911 service that's built into their budget. Ours is separate from that. So it's just, we've done, I think it was 2 years ago, we did a good comparison with multiple communities and we worked the departments across the board so you could see some of those comparisons. But it just, sometimes you might be like, well, I wonder what this community looks like as far as a budget. Just know that there's a lot of different variables that go into building these budgets and we want to make sure we're comparing apples and apples. So, Mayor.
Other questions? Council Bell.
I have a couple of questions for both of you, and would like to start with, if we were to ask your teams if they have the training they need to maintain best practices in the field, do you have enough of what you need to make sure they're keeping up with that?
Certainly, we're one of 2 nationally accredited agencies in the state at the advanced accreditation level. So we're bringing those best police practices forward, and we're employing those every day. As far as the training goes, we have a very robust training division. We are facing some challenges this year with that because with the elimination of the professional standards lieutenant's position, that whole training coordination piece is going to have to be broken up amongst other supervisors. So that's going to create a little bit of a deficiency in organizing and scheduling that type of training.
We're struggling, and we're struggling. I think it's a transient thing. I don't think it's going to go on forever, but we're struggling because we're really young. We've had a lot of turnover. We have a lot of our staff that's really young. And so over the past couple of years and for the next few years, we are pulling back on some of the more advanced skills and on some of the stuff that we need to be prepared for, but doesn't happen very often, and the need to focus on core behaviors and core skills with a very young staff to keep them safe. The best example I can give you focuses around basic firefighter safety and training, making sure that they're really strong on that because, as I said, 25% of our staff has been with us less than 5 years. And some of the other things, we're trying to maintain competencies, but it's tough in tough budget times trying to do these things on duty. But stuff like a confined space rescue, rescuing somebody from a manhole and those types of things, those advanced skills are things that we struggle to maintain. And we're always, every budget year we're doing an assessment about whether or not that's a program that we can maintain, right? It's something that certainly we have industrial sites, water rescue, hazardous materials response, rope rescue, confined space rescue. We have industrial sites that could call on us for that. The frequency at which they call on us is very low, but the impact of us being able to do those skills when the time comes is very high. And so we're doing a value assessment every year about where we spend our value, where we put our training, the assets, in order that, to make budget and to meet the needs of our staff. And we're struggling. I think we're navigating it okay. But again, that's because we're focused so heavily in the last few years, and I think for the next few years on the core functions of what we do 95% of the time, which is EMS transport and firefighting and some of those other specialties of just we've had to provide. I would love to be able to do more, but we've prioritized differently.
With the intensity of some of the calls and some of the work your teams are doing, could you talk a little bit about what you have in place around debriefing or emotional health supports?
Certainly, we have a very robust peer support team that we utilize that will meet with officers, and we will do critical incident stress debriefings after every major call that we have, where there's some kind of trauma or high-intensity call. And we have about 15 members on that team that all receive training in critical incident stress debriefings and peer support. So not only is it about just doing the debriefings, it's about monitoring our employees' well-being as well. So we'll do check-ins with our employees. The team is very good about reaching out to people they think might be struggling to ensure that they're okay, and if they're not, getting them the resources they need to be able to navigate that.
Yeah, we don't have a defined list of what reaches the threshold of critical incidents, but we have access to critical incident stress teams that have come in from time to time based on the nature and severity of the calls. And our supervisors are trained to monitor that and make referrals. We do have access to behavioral health specialists as well as employee assistants that the supervisors are trained to direct employees to.
Great. Last question for now, I think. With the interface of behavioral health with law enforcement in terms of community response, could you just talk a little bit about what's set up here in Auburn?
So certainly we have what we call our PSY program, Project Support You, and we have 2 contract specialists through Spurwink that deploy with our officers. They do check-ins with some of our homeless community to ensure that they're getting proper resources. They will do follow-ups with mental health calls. They'll get those complaints and that information. They'll go out and do their own follow-ups with those people to ensure that they're getting the resources that they need. And we've seen somewhat of a reduction in our repeat calls for service to those locations because we're being able to reach out and touch those people and get them the resources that we need. So far, the program's been very successful for us.
Just to follow up on that, so the last couple of years in the spring, we've had a presentation to the council on PSY with the chiefs. We haven't scheduled that yet, but we have that on our list to give the council, especially the 3 new counselors, more information on that program and the success that they've had. Other questions by the council? Councilor Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to expand on that question to the issue of homelessness overall, I know that the newer structures or procedures in place with the shelter, a warming center, 121 Mill, they haven't been around a long time, but I'm wondering if you're sensing that there's been an impact on the burden on your staff with those in place.
I think that the burden remains the same. I think the availability of resources is expanding, and those folks are getting the help that they need. But as far as the workload, that's still there because we're still going to encampments and working with Public Works and whatnot to get those encampments cleaned up. So we're seeing the same amount of encampments, but the mental health part of it might be going down a little bit because of PSY and the mental health resources that they're getting and the resources they're getting through the 121 Mill Street Center as well.
I would kind of echo the same sentiment. One of the things I'll say with regard to our PSY deployment, again, we have a Spurwink employee embedded with the fire department as well that responds during the weekdays with our EMS units. And those calls still come in, and we have actually seen some call deferral. And what I mean by that is that once we go to a patient that might have behavioral health or substance abuse issues, we can direct them to PSY, and they're getting some more definitive care than they were just with EMS transport and release, which has helped us. And I think that with regard to the bird, we're going on those calls. We've had some call deferral, meaning we've gotten some people into definitive care that's kept them from calling the 3rd, 4th, sometimes 14th and 15th time over the course of 6 months. And that, I think that the real benefit for our staff for that is not just the reduction in calls, but combating what we call compassion fatigue and going to the same call 10 or 12 or 15 times over the course of 6 months and feeling relatively helpless because that individual isn't getting in definitive care, and it's mentally drawing on our staff to keep going to those same types of calls, and transport them and see them walk out the hospital an hour and a half later. And so one of the things that I think PSY has really helped with is our folks feeling like they have a mechanism to direct somebody to PSY, and then that ultimately we've seen success in them getting some level of treatment and care out of that they weren't otherwise getting just by us doing a transport.
Other questions, Council Collins?
Now I'm losing my train of thought. I appreciate those comments. Chief, I know you all have been working on addressing traffic enforcement. That's something that certainly I've heard from residents. I know you're working on that. With your current budget, could you speak a little bit to the challenges of that, or do you feel that you're going to be able to make progress, or is that, of our request of keeping this as a flat and very bare bones budget, how does that have an impact on that?
So currently, our PACE unit, our traffic enforcement unit, consists of a sergeant and a patrol officer, and they've made great improvements over the last 2 years on traffic enforcement in the city. Our numbers are through the roof. Our enforcement levels are up over 100% from years past. So with those two officers staffing that unit, we're making great strides in traffic enforcement.
I think one thing to keep in mind on this, and I do owe you the update that the chief provided regarding the traffic enforcement plan, but I think that the mayor and I have had a lot of conversations on this too. It's changing culture, not just internally with the team, it's also externally with driver behavior, right? And so it takes a lot of effort to do this. When I was chief, one thing I shared was that many people who travel through the town of Lisbon, you know where that section is. You better slow down because they're always there, right? They're always there. In Auburn, we have like 30 of those sections. So we don't have just the one. So if an officer's freed up and they can go and sit in a section, they're just so spread out. And so as the chief moves his team around, it's really difficult. And then when we add on to that, another layer is when you have such traffic that, again, this is about changing culture and providing additional resources for the team. Because if you're on some of our busy corridors, the time or effort and the safety issues with trying to get your vehicle out and around and back to try to make that stop becomes difficult. So then am I trying to make an impact by being on the road and being visible, or am I making an impact by making a traffic stop? Because every traffic stop, you're going to have, another few dozen cars see you on that traffic stop. But then there's that human element that comes in with the chief's team, because when it's a distracted driving or one of these citations and you're looking at $300, $400, $500 fine, there's that human element that comes into that as well, right? So those are all the pieces, and the mayor and I have been having good conversations about this. We're having conversations with the chief about how do we deploy where we need to be, how do we have a better impact, especially on, I think one thing that we have is we have a lot of data. We can drill into data, but then how do we deploy based on that data? Because that's changing culture as well. I could tell you that when I was a patrol officer, I'd know right where I'd want to go sit. It was easy. I knew where it was. I'd sit there and I knew, I could do some updates to a report. I could do something else. Well, handwriting sheets. I didn't have the MDTs, but you had that place where you could kind of be. We may not need you there. We might need you over at another location because we know based on data that every day between 10 and 11:30, there's a crash right at this intersection. So how do we get you there so you're making that impact? Those are things the chief is working through with his team, but the challenge is that there's a turnover, right? You just get somebody kind of understanding that, get them into place. Next thing you know, they've been promoted or they've transferred to another unit, and then you've got to work that through again. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I think it's changing that culture internally and externally.
And there's also a learning curve too, because understand that within our patrol division, 61% of my patrol division has 2 years less on. So we have a very young patrol division. So getting them up to speed on our culture of traffic enforcement, that takes some time as well. But also, one of our greatest challenges is technology, because everybody runs Waze or Google Maps in their cars. And somebody sees an officer parked on the side of the road, they hit the button, that pops up on the screen, so everybody knows where that officer's at. So they know, oh, half mile away, here's a police car, I'm gonna slow down. And as soon as I go by that officer, oh, coast is clear, I'm gonna speed back up. So being able to enforce it is challenging for us too, because we're dealing with technology as well. So we're getting that voluntary compliance for that short amount of time because they know where the officer's at, they're going by the officer, and then they're picking their speed back up. So that's been a challenge for us as well.
Other questions? Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been getting a few calls dealing with school crossings. There's some days when there isn't an officer watching kids cross the street, and usually that's when you have a distracted driver because they look for the officer, don't see him, and they lose their concentration. I've been told over by the middle school, a kid almost got hit because the car got distracted and it just corrected itself before a kid got hit. And then over on Park Avenue, there was another group of kids. So do you have how often do your police officers man these crosswalks during school hours?
Very rarely, honestly, because it's about resources and resources management. When you're looking at that time frame, that's also prime commuter time. We're dealing with car accidents. We're dealing with people coming out of their cars and reporting motor vehicle burglaries, reporting businesses opening up, finding they've been broken into. So if the officers are available, yes, we will monitor certain school crossings. But from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., our minimum staffing is 3 patrol officers and 1 supervisor. So during that time frame, I've got typically 3 officers and supervisor. I don't have the personnel to be able to sit on every school crossing. It's just not possible.
I'm having conversations with the superintendent. The school's looking for some solutions. They want to make sure that crossing guards are safe as well. We're talking about, do you bring in someone extra to be able to help out during those times? What's that cost? What's that impact on their budget? So we are having those conversations. I think it's a priority for them as well. We know that Fairview has had some tragedies, and so there's effort there to find a solution, but unfortunately a lot of it comes with lack of resources. And because even if you had it every day, you could say you could fund it, we'll pay overtime every day. Finding people to work those overtime then becomes your challenge. And so it's a struggle. And but I think we keep looking. I know we'll talk about it in CIP. We'll keep looking for what technology can we bring to that area to make sure that it's visible, it's well lit, and then again continuing to try to change behavior for drivers to know that they're coming into school zone and the importance of driving slow.
Other questions from the council? Council Ball.
Just in follow-up to that, one of the recommendations, because I hear this quite often actually around the school zones, one of the recommendations I've been asked about almost the most is whether or not speed tables could be put in. Is that something that's being considered?
Yeah, we could talk about it when we do our CIP for FY27, and we'll talk about some of the traffic calming. We currently have that at Washburn School. You would not be able to do that on other roads because there's restrictions for those roads. We were able to do it on Lake Auburn Ave because of it's our road. We can maintain it. We can make adjustments to it. But you would not be able to do that, like say, on a Minot Avenue or a Court Street to some extent. DOT does have some restrictions with that we need to comply with. But then it's a short amount of time for impacts to traffic as well that you have to weigh out and determine, okay, is that really beneficial? One thing that we started doing was that we do have, we are able to collect data at some of those areas, and what you end up happening is if you have that speed table, they know they're coming into it, so they go fast coming up to it, slow right down, hit the speed table, and then you're going to mentally budget. I mean, you're going to project how long it takes you to go from home, say, to work. Regardless of what happens along that way, you're still going to get there at that time. So if you slow them down that way, a lot of times that just means they're picking up speed the moment they leave. It is safe for that crosswalk, right, because you're slowing that, but then they're gunning out afterwards. So there's some work there. The city engineer will be with us at a future meeting. He had surgery yesterday, so he went home. He wasn't able to stay. But we'll work through some of those discussions regarding traffic calming.
Other questions by the council? Chief Chase, I just wanted to follow up on mutual aid with the ambulance. So I know the last couple of years there's been a discussion regarding the volume of mutual aid calls to Lewiston because, and just for the new counselors and the public, the city of Lewiston doesn't have an ambulance service. They contract with United Ambulance. And one of the challenges we've had in the past is whether United Ambulance was actually staffing to a level to handle the projected calls in Lewiston and an excess number of mutual aid calls. Can you speak to that? Has that gotten better? Is it the same? What's the current situation?
It has gotten better, but I'll say that it's inconsistent and streaky. And so we'll see a week. We track it on a weekly basis, and we might see a week where we're in Lewiston 3 to 5 times, and a little bit harder. It's data for us to track is how often we get mutual aid back from United, because we may not even be on those calls sometimes. So it seems empirically that typically in that 3 to 5 a week, there's some parity with us. But then we'll have a week where we might see 10 to 15 calls to Lewiston within a given week. One of the things our model and our structure builds in is remarkable consistency. And that's with, we have a workforce a large workforce, and only a portion of it is used for EMS. And that gives us the opportunity when people are out sick and all those and other things might impact it, that we have a larger pool to draw from to be sure that those units get staffed. Not every ambulance service has that. And so I don't really know all of the details sometimes about what has happened from a staffing perspective over there. But certainly we see that we'll go some weeks where it's very lopsided. Now, if I go back to the few years post-COVID, it was lopsided very, very, very frequently. That has improved. It's lopsided less frequently. Like I said, we might see, if I were to look back at our data for the last 3 months, I would say that we had maybe 3 weeks in which you would say there was a big disparity of something like we were in Lewiston 10 to 15 times, whereas they were here 3 to 5.
Yeah, so I guess my follow-up on that is I understand mutual aid, and I understand that the business that both of you are in is completely inconsistent. You're at the mercy of when someone punches 911 and says, come on out. So there will be some unbalance. I think the bigger question is the staffing, right? We've taken some time and looked at this and added the third ambulance on, and I guess that's where my question is. When we have these unbalanced weeks, is it because they just happen to have a circumstance where there's a lot of EMS calls and they happen to run around the same time? Or are we getting those calls because United is not deploying enough resources to handle the average load?
I think
know.
I think that it's. I'm speculating only, but within their operation, but that there's times in which for people calling out sick or whatever, and they don't have the same tools that we do to fill those shifts. I think that's part of it. But there's at least a third, if not a fourth player here too. And one of those players is the hospital, the hospital's capacity and the hospital's ability to take patients. And so when the hospital is sending a lot of patients south and there's a lot of transfers that need to happen, that draws a lot of United resources. They're now out of this area. And we, as a system, and we really have to look at EMS as a system. And I appreciate the comments because it's something we watch very closely. But that, the hospital's ability to take a patient. So you might pick up a patient, the hospital says, they're going to Portland. They may go to Central Maine first, they may not, but either way, United's probably taking them out of Central Maine and sending them to Portland when they need to go. That's drawing resources out of the system. That then means that they may be a little compromised. And that's not always easy to predict, right? It's based on surge and capacity. But what we do see from that, again, because we think of it as a system, we have actually, over the past year, seen an increase in what we call requests to us for what we call paramedic intercepts. So we have EMS units coming in from further away that aren't licensed at the highest level of paramedic, and they're looking for assistance. So we're meeting them en route to put our paramedics on board their ambulances because they may only be at the EMT basic level, for example. And we've started to see more of those, and we're intercepting with Turner, Buckfield, Poland, Oxford at a higher frequency than we were. And that's kind of trickled down from the same problem, right? The system resources, those often were United was being called for those intercepts. Now we are. If you remember back a couple of years ago, we changed our intercept billing rates, right, to try to balance that out. We increased the fee that we charge those ambulance services when we intercept with them, in a way of trying to say, hey, call us when definitely needed, but as you do, we recognize it's a drain on our system too, and we've tried to adjust the revenue accordingly. But generally as a system, I think that we're still working through the logistics, and I talk about the system with regard to all of the EMS providers within our circle. We're still working on the system of how mutual aid handles surges, right? And the unpredictability. None of us can afford to staff at the highest level we want, where we can always cover all of our own calls. One of the things that I'm grateful for in the service that Auburn has is the consistency and predictability, right? I can always staff those shifts. We have mechanisms built in. I can tell somebody they can't go home in the morning if that would leave me without a staffed ambulance. And we do that to ensure that we maintain consistency. And we always have those services available. So it's a tool that's available to us. It positions us really well to be strong partners in this mutual aid system for sure. I think I'm biased, but I would say the cornerstone of the system for that reason, because we have that staff consistency. And I think that your point's really valid, Mayor, and that's to continue to watch that there's parity, and maybe try to find some tools that we can collect some better data on how we're getting that repaid to us, right? And that's a difficult thing for us to track, but maybe we can try to find some better ways.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a significant problem, especially, I appreciate your comments about being a system, and I think that is exactly right on the EMS side, but I think it's going to be a problem when you have a situation like United, who's filling two roles. They're the emergency response for Lewiston, and they're doing the transports, and if they take off units that are going to be doing emergency response to do a transport, and now we're responding, and if these outlying communities can't staff with the level of training they need, so we have to keep expending resources to do the intercepts. It's it's a significant problem. It's something that we need to watch, because it doesn't seem like it's going to get better.
I think you're right. I don't think it's going to get better, and I think that one approach that we can continue to do, and I'll look at through this process again is if there's a revenue model that helps us to ensure that if you don't get equity through parity of service, you get equity through reimbursement.
Right. Other questions or comments?
Just a
Councilor
quick
Callen.
comment. It's not going to get better. Is it going to get worse?
I don't know. One of the things I will say is I value the fact that we have the security in the system that we do in Auburn. We've struggled with, to some extent, with staffing, and we've had some ongoing vacancies, and we're kind of constantly hiring, but I have a big pool to draw from, right? And the fact that we don't have just a fire department and just an EMS department means that I have 64 EMS providers that can fill all of those roles. And that builds an incredible amount of consistency, my ability to be dynamic with staffing and meet those needs. And so I'm very comfortable where Auburn stands with regard to the regional system. I think there are some other weak players, and there's some vulnerabilities in our region. The best I think we can hope for is to remain strong and be able to pivot quickly when that happens.
Yeah, I think just as follow-up to that, I don't know whether it's going to get worse or not, but I think that the legislature recognized it was too big of a problem to tackle. The manager's well aware of this. Over the last couple of years, there was significant amount of study by the legislature with the lack of EMS services that were available, and there was lots of discussion about having a regional EMS model and lots of different ways to do this. None of that came to fruition because it's a really big problem to tackle, and it's probably going to be very expensive to do so.
Yeah, and I would just add too, Mayor, how fortunate I am and how fortunate we are as a city. We've got two chiefs that are in the room when those conversations are happening at a state level. The legislators tap them to be on committees because we've been so dynamic in how we deliver our services. They know we have different models here. They're tapping and bringing them into that conversation. So that's, for us as a city, to be in part of that conversation, to be able to share the challenges that we currently have, talk about lessons learned, what have we done in certain areas that maybe we need to pivot away from that, and we're not afraid of that. If there's something, we're okay with trying something and saying, okay, let's throw everything we have at it, see what takes place, and then as the economy changes, as the so many different variables shift with our healthcare system, they're pivoting as we maneuver. There'll be a pivot again. We'll see what takes place with the sale of Central Maine Medical Center, right? They're part owner of United. What does that look like? What changes will we see with that? And so the teams at that table, they're having those conversations and at a state level, and for both of them, they're also in conversations outside of the state too, just as in their professions and what they do. They are looked upon as the leaders in the state. And so we're really fortunate to have that with both of them. So.
Other questions from the council? No. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have further opportunities to talk with you as we work through the budget.
They're not going to go far because they can sit back there in the gallery for now, but we do have CIP items, and you might have some follow-up, and I've asked some of the staff to be here for some of that follow-up with the CIP. I'm a generalist. I can tell you the surface of some of these items, but it's really important for them to talk about the real impact on why is that replacement schedule coming? What's on the horizon for additional capital infrastructure? So I did provide in your packet the CIP 5-year capital improvement plan. A couple of highlights for the public and for you,
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, before you get into the details, it might be helpful for the council and the public to provide a brief explanation about the relationship between the 5-year CIP plan and how current year CIP funding gets appropriated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so what you have is this 5-year plan, and it's a plan. It's what we are anticipating. We are moving all of our assets into an asset management system. There's a predictor that's coming in the future, and that asset predictor will allow us to really evaluate every piece of asset we have and determine, are we spending too much in maintenance on a piece of equipment that it's time to replace. The software tells us that. We'll work through that, because when you think about all the numerous facilities we have, equipment that's in those, the HVAC systems, we have a lot of assets that it's really important for us to manage that. What you'll see next year, one thing that we're going to be working on is actually providing you a 10-year plan, because that will be able to capture just what's around the horizon for us. And so it's timing up well with how we believe we'll be able to roll out our asset management system, but then really be able to give you a 10-year window of what we're looking at. And again, we build some of these numbers off from what's the cost today. If you go back 5 years when some of these items were put into the plan, we had no idea we would be seeing some of the cost escalators that we've had with tariffs, with other world labor shortage, labor increases with some of these costs. price of steel, all those things have impacted us greatly. And so we're working through that. So as the mayor said, this is a 5-year plan. This is very different than what you will eventually adopt. What you see in that column for FY27, that is not what I'll recommend. But we want to make sure we make sure that you know all of the needs, the best that we can identify. So you know what those are. We'll prioritize that. I'll provide it in a list. But for you, you might look at that list and say, that's not what I think we really should be funding. Let's go and look at this other item, and you have the plan to then work off from. Sometimes what ends up happening, there are some items that we put in the plan that they're in there for if all things were great and we had this additional money, could we move forward with, say, a dog park? That's one of the ones that you'll see in here, right? That's a request that's come from the community in every survey we do. We've tried to find some ways to make that happen. We've looked at some grants. We've done different things. We carry it over in the 5-year plan. It just gets pushed off a year until we can really find that right balance between, can we get some funding for it? Is there a desire? Is there a location? And if it all comes together, we typically will look to move forward on projects like that. So there's some of those projects in there. And then there's projects that immediate needs. We know that they weren't in the plan. They may not have been in that 5-year plan. If you were to go back and look at the 5-year plan and go, how did this item creep up on us? It's because there might have been a match that came along that we're now able to do it. We didn't even know, but it's something that there is a need there. So let's move with it. We try to make as many of our projects as shovel ready as we can. So if things do come along, they're ready. But it might not necessarily get into our plan because it might be a need that has come up and made available or made aware of it rather. So, Mayor, does that cover what you're?
Yeah, thank you.
So, in your budgets, when I talked about here's the amount that we're currently looking at, Kelsey was able to float in an amount in there. Basically, it was the same amount that the council approved last year for a CIP. We just floated that. It's in there. That number will move based on what you actually determine it to be. You, as a group, might say, we want to reduce that by $1 million. Well, then we'll float that down. You might say, we want to increase that. Whatever that looks like, that's the work that you all will do, but we need to carry a number, just so that we don't want you to get towards that point in the process, and then we put in the interest, because the first year we only pay the interest for that bond, but then we put that amount in, and then your numbers increase, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about this for an increase. So that's why that's floated. So you don't see that big swing later on when you're ready to finalize the budget. So I'm going to walk through these for you just in categories. I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail on them. We'll make that available for you. As you'll see, some of these are very detailed. There's items that we see oftentimes in the CIP that they don't always meet our definition of something that we bond. And capital improvement does not mean bond. When you get to the point when we provide you the FY27 CIP, you're going to see a category that's what will be bonded. Then you'll see a category that's operating capital. That means we've worked it into the budget. And so that item might be in the plan, but you're going to see it in the budget. It just means that it's not something that we not always see on a regular basis. And so we put it into this capital improvement plan. And then there might be another funding source. And so it's in the plan. It's not going to be bonded. It's not going to be in the operating, but there's a additional funding source that comes in. I think the best example for us on that is the EMS equipment, right? So if we're replacing an ambulance, you're going to see that in that category, because when we collect the revenue, we skim off some of that revenue to go into a capital improvement account. And then that capital improvement account then pays for that debt service. Pays for that debt service, or it'll fund that piece of equipment. They might have a new new piece of equipment that's needed on the ambulance, well, it's funded that way. So that's the structure, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of how we work this. Trying to make this smaller so you can see the whole screen. All right, so your first item is the Auburn Lewiston Municipal Airport. This is, you'll see where it's tagged here that it's the city share. So that means that whatever line item that you see, the one for annual pavement management program for $150,000, the actual cost that they're looking for is $300,000. This is Auburn's share. Lewiston would have the other 150,000 requests. And so, couple of things, I think the airport manager was able to put together a really great 5-year plan for the airport because we've been working through the master plan, the airport master plan. Well, that's identified a lot of things for us. And so Jonathan's done a great job of putting that in here for you, trying to project what's happening and anticipate some growth that might be beneficial or driven because of the increased use at the airport. But I think this gives you some items that are really clear for us. I think that a couple of these items, we'll need to do. A CDS match means that that's congressional directed spending for a hangar project that the project was funded through CDS money. However, the municipality needs to pay the percentage share. And so that's $68,750. That's something you will see in the FY27 request from the manager because we've got to pay that match so that we can get that larger check for that project. And so you might see items like that. And as you see in this one, and again, I won't spend a lot of time here, but you'll see where, for the first 3 years, and you'll see this on most departments, pretty aggressive year 1, 2, and 3. They know those projects, they know what they look like. Sometimes it fades off 3 and 4 unless it's, say, a fire department that knows year 5, I got to replace a fire engine. Well, those are going well over $1 million. You'll see that in that year 5 where it kind of balances out those requests. But you're seeing for the airport, pretty minimal requests for $1 million for some of the items that they're looking at. But I won't recommend all of those because the challenge with the airport and a couple of our other department budgets is that we need a willingness with both cities to be able to move these projects forward. And so we need to kind of have those conversations, that dialogue takes place. What are you looking to fund? What can we fund? What could we present before the council for consideration? There's times when you will go ahead and approve something in the capital improvement plan for the airport, but at the final hour, Lewiston may not have. And so we won't fund it. It'll stay in Kelsey will manage that in that account, and it might come back up to be reappropriated if Lewiston's not funding it. And the same thing that happens on the other side as well. We've had times when they've approved something and we didn't on this side of the river. The project didn't move forward. So, okay. Questions about airport. Again, these are certain upgrades to areas. It certainly aligns with the master plan, but these are the items. Sorry, Councilor. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, my question about the airport is relative to last year's 5-year CIP. In that plan, I think all we had was the CDS line item for 68, and then pavement. I'm looking at it right now. FY27, it was terminal parking lot engine 175.
Yep.
Can you just help us understand what has changed in the framing or the inclusion of airport CIP?
Just so we're clear, the items that you're looking for are in the funded CIP for the airport, or it was in the CIP plan?
It was in the proposed 5-year plan submitted at last year's March meeting. And again, my guess is this is just my understanding of what's being represented visually in front of me, but could you help me understand what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question because, like I said, I think the directors put a lot of work into the plan. I think you're now seeing some really significant growth, but you're also seeing the master plan is feeding this information for us now. And so, and then there were, to be honest, it was just the airport wasn't stable for a few years, and so we didn't have that consistency, and it took Jonathan a little bit of time to really get into there and to identify what's really our needs and what are we seeing and how can we forecast the future. So this is what you're seeing with having somebody that has a good knowledge of what's going on, a good plan to work off from, and then start providing you that. You should have had it in the past. We were lacking in that area.
So it is safe to say then that what we're seeing now in front of us this year, it's additional spending, it's additional consideration. Obviously, elsewhere in our city council discussions, we've determined that there's additional value in the airport. And so, but I just want to be clear, this is new spending. This isn't something that was hiding before.
Yeah.
This is new requests for something that was possibly underfunded.
Yeah, or not
Or
funded.
being neglected.
Yeah, or neglected. That's a great way to say it. Or neglected. It just wasn't, it was never brought before anyone really to say that, hey, this is a need and we need to make sure that we're planning on it. I think that the great benefit that we've had is that with Jonathan being part of the staff and being assigned there, he's now working with the other departments on getting some of just the general maintenance, which has been working out really well. We build the airport when that happens, and so the airport's paying for that, 50% from us, 50% from Lewiston. But we're tackling some of the low-hanging fruit, I guess you could say. But these would require more than what's built into the budget. Yeah, great question. Big change.
Council Cowan?
Just to point out that, just to highlight and reinforce your comment, Phil, that there's been substantial growth in the utilization of that airport, and that, so I think kudos to the work that's being done. But I imagine, to your point, Councilor Platts, that some of this is because of the expansion for that demand to react to that. So.
And it's driven by some conversations that we're having with other partners, and I think that's the other piece too. Statewide public safety. We're having a conversation with them about access to the airport and how it's centrally located, how this could be a good location for them. So there's an item in here that talks about the public safety hangar project. That's in conversation, but we want to make sure we're plugging it in now. So you know that conversation's happening. I think in year 2, you'll see a line item that's in there regarding Life Flight. Life Flight, the Auburn Lewiston Airport is the home base for Life Flight. But they have expanded needs as well. And so we're having those conversations internally and with some of our partners on what does this look like forecasting moving forward. And so sometimes it's not necessarily where, we might be putting it within the CIP because it's a CIP project. How it's funded will be different. It doesn't mean, like I said before, it doesn't mean that we're going to be bonding that. It just means that we'll partner and hopefully bring in another funding source for it.
Just one other
questions?
quick question. I don't know, just pointing in case it's an oversight, but annual pavement management program only has dollars in fiscal year 27.
Yeah.
Is that intentional?
Yeah, this pavement management program really has to do with the area around the airport as you're coming in. So this isn't related to the runway, right? So this is related to, once you do that, then you've built that out for now. It'll cover us for quite a few years.
Thanks.
Yeah, it probably hasn't been done in 20 plus years. So you can just drive up there, you can tell. So, all right, I'm going to move on. Record restoration, you'll see here for city clerk as well as a fireproof vault. That's something that we know that we need to work on. The amount of records that we retain inside the facility, there's a need there for us to continue looking at expansion on that. Even though record restoration's here, doesn't mean that we bond it. It means that it might be in capital operating. When you take a look at finance, Eagle View is one of those items that hits the finance budget as well as reval. We're in that final. This will be the final year of the reval, so that's one that we won't be pushing off because we're currently in a multi-year contract with KP. Say that wrong. KRT. Thank you. So KP is the place we get hot dogs. So KRT, and so this is the final year of that. Their work will be done after the completion of this. So not a lot of capital items really drive finance. But you might see them in IT because it has to do with some software purchase or management. So, and that goes for all the departments. We've tried to consolidate these over the years. So you're looking at the IT budget and you're looking at how the software impacts all the departments. So fire department, again, this is, a rotating schedule on equipment is critical for us. If we push off something one year, it now pushes off those other capital infrastructure for multiple years, and that's a challenge. The fire chief is here and certainly will speak to any of these items for you, but there are really critical needs here. I think the turnout gear is one that I want to highlight, is that having an additional set of turnout gear is really critical for our firefighters, because we go to multiple calls and we could go to multiple fires, and cleaning that and being able to set aside turnout gear so you're not bringing those contaminants back on your body, back in the area that you're working in, or back to another scene is really important. So it's an area that I know is a priority for the chief. We're working through that. This is part of that plan on building up that additional PPE equipment. So when you see that, that's just that personal protective equipment for our firefighters. And then we're on a decent schedule as it pertains to some of our other equipment like fire hose replacement. Those, you'll just constantly see those. You're gonna, you think about, at one point, I don't remember what the amount is, but just how many feet of fire hose we have, and you've got to change that out regularly. And again, that's an item that in the last couple of years, we've started moving that to the capital operating, so we're not bonding on that. And so that's just some of the internal items that we really focused on. And then the EMS, you'll see these items funded in that other category when you start taking a look at the budget. But these are just, you'll always see cardiac monitor replacements. You'll always see stretcher replacements, just with the sheer volume of calls that they go on. And then we'll always be working on the ambulance. One thing that I think they're creative on is how can they replace or remount, the chassis still good, how can we take the box off, bring a new box on that piece of equipment so we're not replacing the entire piece of equipment. The fire apparatus replacement, you'll see that's 1.6 million. We'll be needing to have that conversation because it takes 3 years for them to build a fire truck. So we've got to get our order in, and so we'll be working through that with you to talk about how do we do that and what does that look like. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and remind me, because of the long lead time now, my recollection is we have to set aside money out of the fund balance basically to account for this ahead of time. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So we would do a council order authorizing it's called a restricted fund balance. So we'd restrict that amount in our fund balance. So it's not technically spent. It's just saying if for some reason we don't have any funding come in for this, we have agreed that this dollar amount will be used for this purpose. Because we have to do purchase orders for these items several years in advance. And a purchase order is basically saying we have these funds to pay for this order. Whether or not we decide to bond for those or use fund balance, but we have to at least use fund balance to say we have some funds to pay for this order, even though it's 3 years in advance.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that gets into we always are challenged with you making decisions that are, how does that going to impact the council that comes on maybe after you, right? And so this is an area that we worked on the last couple of years, finding that solution, because not just fire trucks, public works vehicles, some of that is equipment. It's 3 years out. That's how long it's going to take for us to get it. So this allows you to take the order, place it in there. You're saying that even if the other council chooses not to bond that item, you've said, well, then it comes out of the fund balance. So it can come out of there, or that council can choose to pay for it out of a bond. So it really, you're not tying their hands. You're using your authority based on what's available for you today. So.
Yeah, now that the lead cycle's so long that you can't obtain the item in the year in which you order it, you've incurred this liability, and you have to have the ability to pay for it, because we've incurred the liability when we order it.
Correct, and if that future council determines that bonding is the direction they want to go, those funds that were restricted in the fund balance just become unrestricted fund balance. So it remains part of the fund balance unless and until it's spent.
Great. Yeah, great conversation, Mayor. I think that's a lot of moving pieces with that, so just so it's clear on what that looks like. Information
Just
technology.
out of curiosity, for a fire truck like that or equipment, are there down payments, or is it you pay on a receipt?
Yeah.
So sometimes there are, sometimes they require a certain amount to show, or there are other times where they'll say, that purchase order that we've agreed, yes, we've set aside funds for this is enough. It depends on where we're ordering from and what their requirements are. We do put out RFPs in order to get the best prices we can from the best known vendors, but
Yeah, well, we typically go out to bid and we get the bid from multiple vendors. And in most cases, they can offer us, if you will, the price in 3 different ways. 15% down, your total cost is this. If you want to do 50% down, your total cost is that. And they're completely willing, believe it or not, to let you put 100% down. We never do that, of course, because we want to hold something and make sure we've put eyes on the truck and it's passed all of our testing. But the price actually is slightly cheaper depending on how much you put forward. So we always do a value assessment there on whether or not what we want to put down, but still have obviously some collateral so we can make sure it's manufactured the way we want. It tests out before we paid the last of the bill.
and we can basically refund our fund balance for anything that was prepaid, for example, that is later determined to be bonded.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
So information technology, I've asked Jill to come up just to talk about our infrastructure, the network, as it pertains to fiber connection. This is something we started probably, I think 2020 maybe, somewhere around there, 2021, really making an effort to start building our infrastructure and fiber. And there's a return on that. Jill can cover some of that with you, as well as the security camera project. So we've started making some changes as it pertains to really identifying areas where does it make sense, especially in some of our parks, playgrounds, those things. We've built in some cameras as a means of security for that.
Good evening. So they kind of go hand in hand. A lot of the security and enhancements that we've been working through and a lot of the parks throughout the city need fiber connection. So the fiber money allows us to have the cameras in different locations throughout the city. Along with a lot of the new buildings, we've been putting our own fiber from City Hall, so that's giving us that direct connection instead of leasing lines. So we've been working through that.
That's a real big piece, about just the savings on leasing lines and being really beholden to someone else, and being able to have the security of our own system is really critical. So we were able to kind of put a large injection into this project with ARPA funds, and so that kind of got things started for us. And then now we're just really putting money in to just do small incremental increases as we move along. Questions for Jill on our system?
What's the life cycle of a fiber network? If we get this fully installed, how many years until we have to start doing it again?
I would say quite a few years, like 30 years. Yeah.
How far into the project? Can you remind us, are we 75% the way, or?
So currently, we've only done new buildings. We haven't started doing all of the lease lines with the fire station project. So engine 2 will be our first that will replace that line. And then next we'll do central station and then continue to pick off. We have like 12 lines total. So each year if we do small amounts, then it gets us to that number.
Jill would probably tell you I keep moving the goalpost because she has a plan that she's working through, and then I say, oh, by the way, we're setting up a community resource center at 121 Mill Street. So she pivots and she makes that work. And by the way, we now have 67 Kitty Hawk. And while we're out there, we might as well tie into the airport. And so
Yep.
the goalpost moves on her, but I think she makes those adjustments, and we continue to make those improvements. Good. Great. Thanks, Jill.
Yep.
talked a little bit about Norway Savings Bank, Arena, and Ingersoll, that even though those are enterprise accounts, if you remember last week when we talked about their budget, their capital items come in through our capital improvement plan. And when it comes to Norway, the Arena is sitting at about 12 years old. So we know, and many of you were on the tour, you saw the, they do a great job of maintaining, but there's a lot of use, and that use is wearing out some of the surfaces, whether it's, we're constantly, they got a rotation of when they're painting walls, they got a rotation of when they're replacing some of the equipment. But there's been a great investment by the city, not just initially, but then also as we move forward. I think Mark's here, someone have him come up. And, but there are some definite needs when it comes to some of the rubber flooring, not just at Norway, but also at Ingersoll. And that's just because of safety, good use for the type of services we're providing in these areas, especially with the newer gym area within Norway. But Mark, I don't know if you want to cover some of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with Ingersoll, and again, thank you for coming to visit and taking a walk through and seeing the facility. We got to remember that Ingersoll was originally an ice rink, so when we repurposed it, there were some differences there in how we were going to put the turf in. We actually purchased a gently used turf product at the time, and also the rubber or the current kind of laminate flooring that's outside of the turf. At that point, that's what we felt like we needed to get done in regards to making sure we got it operational. But as we've gone through the years at Ingersoll, we figured out, now we're seeing the major wear on the turf right now because of its usage. Also, we found out some of the insulation wasn't necessarily put down right underneath the turf. And then also now from a safety standpoint, as we're seeing how people use the turf, right, is now we're seeing that laminate wasn't necessarily the proper, floor structure for that, right? And having a rubberized floor structure out there will allow a good safety piece for all of our users, as well as putting in a brand new piece of turf that allows us to not go through something where it affects the operational use. And as we get to the Arena, it was built in 2013. I will say Rink 1 is our heavily used area, and the rubber has withstood a really good amount of usage, but we're seeing, as you saw, a lot of wear right now because we've never replaced it since the day the building is opened. And then to Phil's point about maintenance on a major piece of equipment, they do have a life cycle, and those Zambonis or ice resurfacers are 10 to 12 years. And we're reaching that point with our current ice resurfacer and seeing a lot of maintenance that we have to do on it.
Questions regarding Norway, Ingersoll? Okay. I think we can probably cover PD tonight, and then we'll pick up on the CIP plan at our next workshop. But I'll ask the chief to come back up. And so with the PD, there's a bit of a pause because, and I think both the fire chief less so because he has other buildings that he's working through, but for the PD, there's been a bit of pause on some of the capital because it's always, for the last few years, it's just been in anticipation of the new public safety building. So you're not seeing some of the, maybe some of the requests that you would normally see. But we certainly have items and needs, from some improvements for when they're doing their firearms training, just for storage. We never seem to have enough storage anywhere. And then as well as the annual replacement for the cruiser and body camera system replacement. I'll let the chief talk about that. Doesn't mean we're changing it out every year, taking pieces within that, and then, or we're paying rather on the system that we just put in. And so these are the payments for that. And And so Chief, I don't know if you want to cover
Sure.
those.
Starting off with vehicle replacement. We've determined over the years that our patrol vehicles have about a 4-year life cycle, and our support and administrative vehicles have a 5 to 8-year life cycle. And what we'll do is, as we determine.
Sorry, they're not covering vehicles, that's under fleet. We'll do that.
Sorry.
We'll bring him in later. Sorry, you don't have that right in front of you. It's down under another section. So he's got the individual sheets, that's what he's covering, but for the 5-year plan, I'll just give you that.
So with our body cameras, we have a 5-year contract with our provider to provide services for our body cameras and our in-car cruiser cameras. And so you'll see that under the cruiser body camera replacement, there's actually an area that's supposed to be $152,000 across all 5 years. And what that does is that it's our annual contractual fee for that over the 5-year period that we have the contract. And within that 5 years, that also includes equipment refreshment for us that we're actually currently going through now with both body cameras and cruiser cameras that have some additional features in those for us. So those are included in that 5-year contract. It's not, our equipment is lasting probably 3 to 4 years before it's being refreshed by the company. So that's all part of that contract. When we talk about the firearms training equipment, we currently do our firearms training at the Androscoggin Fishing Game Club. And over the years, we've struggled with using some of their equipment, depending on who the executive board is at the time. For the last couple of years, we have what we call steel targets, because we're not just shooting at a paper target to do qualifications. We're spending an entire day of training, working on proficiency, accuracy, timing drills, stress drills, and the steel targets are an integral part of that. In the last couple of years, we haven't been able to use the gun club's stuff, and we're to the point now where we have to invest in our own equipment to be able to use it in order to maintain that proficiency that our officers are required to go through on an annual basis. So that firearm training equipment is a vital piece of training, vital training need for us that we need to purchase. Also, we have the storage container, where currently we have a tractor trailer that's out there that we're allowed to keep at the Fishing Game Club for storage of all of our equipment. That trailer is about 25 years old, and it's rotting away. It's no longer weatherproof. And by purchasing this storage container, this would allow us to weather tighten that and replace that trailer that's simply disintegrating. And we're well past the service life for that. And we're finding that some of our equipment is being compromised because of the lack of weatherproofing for that item. And then also we have our AED replacement. Our goal is to have a automatic external defibrillator in each one of our marked patrol cars that our officers are trained on. So a lot of times they're in the immediate vicinity of a cardiac event, and they're able to utilize those AEDs. Our AEDs have reached the end of service life, and we've been taking them out of service because they're no longer replaceable. So we're down to, I think, 4 or 5 in the patrol division, and we need 15 of them to be able to maintain that type of readiness for our officers and for the citizens of Auburn. And I think that's what we had for the capital improvement for this year.
Questions for the chief?
No.
Okay. I think as we wrap up the 5-year plan, just know that you're seeing a line item. You know, we have more information. So this is just each one of those items. There's a lot more, about maintenance, replacement schedule, description. And so as you have more questions, we'll be able to answer those as we go through, and certainly spend the time that I think is really necessary when we start taking a look at the FY27 requests. So that's it for tonight, Mayor.
Are you gonna, is that as far as you want to go tonight?
I think so. I think we're pretty close in time. I think it lines up pretty well with Dan being here at our next meeting to really spend some time with you on the engineering.
Okay, great. In that case, we'll adjourn the work session, and we will reconvene at 7 p.m. for the regular council meeting.
There's an approved trail that they can ride. There's an area where they close the whole process.
The March 16, 2026 Auburn City Council meeting will be called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Councilor Geary.
Good evening, Belinda Gary, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Rachel Randall, City Councilor, Ward 2. Ward 1.
I thought I had the night off, darn it. Good evening, Tim Cowan, Ward 2.
Good evening, Matthew Duval, Ward 3.
Good evening, Jeff Harmon, Mayor.
Good evening, Kelly Butler, Ward 4.
Good evening, Leroy Walker, Ward 5.
Good evening, Adam Platts, at large.
Good evening, Brandon Edwards, Student Representative.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Thank you. The first item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. There are 3 items. The first is confirming Jane Costlow as the Conservation Working Group representative to the Sustainability and Natural Resources Management Board. The second is the appointment of Eric Gould to the Auburn Water District Board of Trustees. And the third is the appointment of Stephen Ness to the Auburn Sewage District Board of Trustees. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
It's moved by Council Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Geary. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is approval of the minutes of the March 2nd, 2026 regular City Council meeting. Are there any errors or corrections? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilor Walker.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The third item on tonight's agenda is communications, presentations, and recognitions. The council will find in your packet a copy of an application for the 2026 AARP Community Challenge Grant Funding. This is a grant application in partnership with the Age Friendly Committee for accessible public perennial gardens providing free food to the community. We'll move on to the first open session of the evening. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Hi, I'm Ben Lounsbury, Ward 1, 505 West Auburn Road. And I'd like to invite you all to a free showing of a movie Friday night, March 27th, at the LA Arts headquarters at 168 Lisbon Street. The movie is named Unless Something Goes Terribly Wrong, and it's 73 minutes long. It has to do with wastewater treatment, and you can get a tour of various wastewater treatment plants, and the smell is terrible, but for this event, you don't have to suffer a bad smell. The movie is really professionally made. I went to the Camden Documentary Film Festival in September and saw it, and it won first prize, and I was really impressed with how professional it was. So it talks about wastewater treatment plants, but it's serious and funny. It's funny in many places, and you'll get a great education out of it. I was so taken with it that I have promoted it in this area. It's a free showing. Please show up and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's any other member of the public who wants to address the council, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
My name is Peter Rubens. I'm the chair of the Gros-Islet River Working Group. The Gros-Islet River Working Group's mission statement is to be the conduit between Lewiston and Auburn for best use of the river since 2014. There are 2 major river licenses that are on the table right now that will affect both cities for the next 40 years. To be or not to be is number 1. The reclassification of the Androscoggin in LA from lowest Class C to the current tested Class B was rejected by the Environment and Natural Resources Committee last week. The DEP said it did not meet their computer model and that Lackwell would have to expand, which it will probably have to do anyway for projected growth. We will continue to do dissolved oxygen testing for the next triennial period review and reapply for Class B in 3 years, re-imaging the river from the dirty Lou up to our beautiful Androscoggin. Number 2, Brookfield's relicense for the next 40 years is on the books right now. The two cities have worked together with legitimate asks for recreation and aesthetics, 40 timed releases over the falls plus holidays, possibly in the evenings to bring people downtown, some public tables, portages, Lewiston's ability to ask for more water for possible recreation in the canals, and money for maintenance at the West Pitch and other river trail needs. I was here 40 years ago and the same ask to CMP. They replied, great idea, but nothing needed now. Nothing in 40 years. We are now asking the two cities to commit to continuing our legal goals of a clean river and aesthetics that draw people down to the water for the next 40-year period. The Great Falls is our natural wonder. Before the Monty was built, water ran over the falls 42% of the time, and after it was built, down to 12% of the time. That's about 140 days of running and down to about 40 days of running right now. Our river is our public domain, and it is the center of the communities. Let's protect the Great Falls and demand the aesthetic flows for LA. Look what Biddeford, Skowhegan, and Westbrook have done with their rivers. Let's continue the hard work together on the river that brings us together rather than tears us apart. We need to be ready to challenge Brookfield over the next few months with our demands for water over our little Niagara. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the public who'd like to address the council, please approach the podium, provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the first open session is closed. There's no unfinished business before the council this evening. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Resolve 0103162026, granting the Auburn Water District approval for the issuance of a bond in the amount of $2,700,000 to complete meter change-out, installation of meters, and any related work necessary to complete these scopes of work. As background on this, especially for the public and the new councilors, while Auburn Water District has their own authority to bond through a peculiarity of their legislative charter, they have to come before the Auburn City Council to get permission. The superintendent is here, and once we have a motion, if there's any questions, I'm sure he'll be able to answer them. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Platt.
Second.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Cowan. If there's any member of the public who would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any. Discussion by the council? Councilor Platt.
Sure, I have a question, as this is the first time something like this has come across our plate in the last two councils, I guess. So my question is, I understand that this has no bearing on our budget, this is a formality. Are there any guardrails that we as a council are supposed to be aware of as far as limits to their ability to bond or authority for us to do anything?
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Manager. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because it's not, like you said, it's not something we typically see. The mayor referenced that as well, but it is a requirement for them. So there, you do have that regulation, right? So you're regulating whether or not they should be moving forward with this and how that capital improvement bond could impact the ratepayer. So that's why it's really in your seat to determine where are they at, what has been taking place there, and what's the need. And I think you have appointed trustees that are assigned, that work through this. I think they've done a good job of I think communicating a lot of their needs, regulating some of their increases. And this is that one step in that formality. But it is you could look at it as you're the gatekeeper. You're really deciding, is that impact necessary for our ratepayers? Or is it something that we should sit on? But I think that when it comes to their debt, I was looking for the superintendent. I don't see him. Oh, you didn't have your hat on, so. I think it'd be good for him to come up just to talk about the need. Thanks, Mike.
And if I could just
Yeah,
add, I mean, I guess,
yeah.
so in the spirit of formalities, then I would just ask either the director or a trustee, is this, in their opinion, is this normal maintenance? Is this in line with what has been bonded in the past? That would be my only question.
Yeah, so before the Superintendent Broadbent talks about the project, this has been in the works for quite some time. There's detailed plans. It's been in front of the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees unanimously supported the bonding and the transmission of the request to the City Council. Mr. Broadbent?
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to consider this and look at this. My name is Mike Broadbent. I am the Superintendent of the Auburn Water and Sewer District. I just want to start with that this bond in no way constitutes any debt on the City of Auburn. This will be paid for through the rates of the customers of the Water and Sewer District. Our meters that are currently in service have been they're aged right now between 15 and 20 years old. Those meters were only guaranteed accurate for the first 3 years. Typically you see meters cycled out after 8 years. We've gotten many more years than that. We did go out to bid with this last year. We selected a new meter technology, and the meters that we selected have a guaranteed life of 20 years. So that'll pay off the life of this bond. It's likely in 20 years from now, they'll be coming back to replace the meters again. So there's a lot of technologies that come with these new meters. We're going to be able to have alerts. The meters won't be read by a reader that drives around once a quarter. They'll report real time back to the district. So if somebody has a leak or a break or something happens, we're going to know instantaneously. We'll be able to alert the customer. So right now that doesn't occur, and we don't find out that somebody used a lot of water until the end of the quarter. So we're going to be pushing a lot of that information out soon so everybody can be informed and have that, and customers will be able to set up their own portal. Landlords will be able to see what's going on in their apartment buildings. They can see real time what they're using for water. So I think it's going to be a big benefit.
Any questions for the superintendent? Yes, Councilor Wren.
Hi. What are the impacts on the paying customer? What are the increases you're expecting?
So the average customer is going to see an increase of less than $1 a week. We are raising our rates 8%, partly to pay back this bond. So there'll be minimal increase. I should have brought those numbers with me, but it's roughly it's like less than $30 a year of an increase. So it's pretty minimal. I'm sorry, per quarter, 30 per quarter. So.
Councilor Cowan.
Just to follow up that, Superintendent, my recollection and the communication from you about that rate increase is that there has not been much of an increase or at any for a number of years. So can you put details to my memory?
Yeah, no, you're correct. The Water District has not raised its rates for a few years now, and looking at our peers around the states, Auburn currently has the third lowest water rates in the state when you look at utilities of our size. So we've done a good job of keeping our rates really low, but we have to maintain the system. We can't neglect the meters. Once they're not accurate, we're losing revenues from that. The tests we've done on the meters we've taken out so far is they're reading 11 to 12% low, which means they're not accurately reading the water. We're losing revenue. It's part of the reason we're doing this. So.
And my recollection from the board meeting is after the 8% increase was still the third lowest.
Yeah, no, we're the third lowest with the 8%, yeah.
Other questions for the superintendent? Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If it's an 8.5% now increase, which will level out, and like you said, make sure everybody's paying their fair share, is the rate going to go up next year, or is it going to pretty much stay solid with this 8% now?
The 8% increase is going in now, as you've stated. I think the district's going to be looking closer at raising the rates on more regulated intervals rather than waiting every 3 to 5 years to raise the rates 8 to 10 to 13%. We're going to be looking at instituting 1%, 1.5%, probably on an annual basis. just to avoid the larger increases and the bigger impacts. So I definitely, that's something we've been talking about and discussing. We haven't put that into motion yet, but that's what we're looking at.
Other questions for the superintendent? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further discussion by the council? Council ready for the question? The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in favor and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Ordinance 0503022026, amending Chapter 60 zoning of the city's Code of Ordinances regarding protections for important farmland and natural resources. This will be for first reading. The council will remember that this item came before the council and was referred to both the Planning Board and the Sustainability and Natural Resources Management Board for their review and recommendations. As you recall from the last meeting, they did transmit their report back in a timely manner. Both have reviewed this and have recommended passage. There was one small suggested edit from the SNRB, and that has been included in the language that is in front of you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Cowan. Is there a
Seconded.
second? Seconded by Councilor Platt. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. One small comment very quickly. The one addition or the suggestion that was made by the SNRB for addition to the language as previously proposed was with respect to determining whether soils are prime soils or soils of statewide importance. It's necessary to use a licensed soil scientist, and the issue that occurred to the SNRB and is in the amended language would require that the applicant pay for the cost of that soil scientist, not the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item? If so, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, we'll move on to discussion by the council. His background, Councilor Platts, when this first came in front of the council, asked for 2 pieces of information that are included in the packet. One was a map showing the various soil types, and the other is the some data regarding the percentage of these types of soil throughout the city and in the AGRP zone. While the raw numbers are in there, just for clarity here, for calculations, if you combine both of these, prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance, those soils exist outside the AGRP zone in the city. 72% of the soils and 28% of those are within the AGRP zone. The impetus for this change regarding siting of solar was concern that solar siting in the ag zone, the prior ordinance did not have a firm regulation that you could not site it on these soils. It allowed you to site it if there was nothing else available on the parcel. In looking at this ordinance, just for clarity for the public and the council, if you look at the red line version, the language is in section 3, 4, 5, 6 are non-substantive. These are cleanups that for clarity in the language and conformance to terms when this section was being worked on. Section 16 just conforms that section to the substantive change, and the substantive change can be found on page 7 of 8 in section G. And the change, the substantive changes here are that It prohibits sighting on prime farmland and farmland of statewide significance. It lays out a method by which that is determined. This method is in alignment with the method that the State Department of Agricultural Conservation and Forestry uses under their authority for solar sighting in sites of 5 acres or greater. And in effect, to summarize, it requires the actual soil to be tested, because while the soil maps are a good estimate, they're not based on actual soil analysis. They're based on geological surveys. And so the substantive change here is that an applicant who wanted to site a solar array in the ag zone would have to test the soil through a licensed, person licensed by Professional Financial Regulation to determine the suitability of the soils. Discussion by the council or questions? Councilor Randall.
This isn't looking to rezone any other zones, correct? This is only for the ag zone? It's not changing any of the other zones into an ag zone?
That's correct. It doesn't extend the ag zone, and the regulations around solar arrays in the ag zone around both soil and percentage of the available land that could be used for a solar array, those regulations do not apply any place else in the city outside of the ag zone. Other questions or comments? Is the council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Randall?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Duvall?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion was adopted at first reading. For the public, this will be on the agenda 2 weeks from now for the public hearing and the second reading. We'll move on to the next item, which is a public hearing regarding the renewal of funding for automated license plate readers. So as some background on this, this is the item, I think you've probably more commonly heard this referred to by the vendor name, Flock Cameras. There's been a lot of discussion about this in the community. It was all triggered by the budgetary request. So I think how I'd like to work through this is the chief is going to give an overview of the system. We'll have some discussion and chances for the council to ask questions. It would be helpful at that stage if we're just trying to make sure everyone understands what the system is that is currently in place and how it operates. We'll then take public comment, and then we'll return for more discussion about the council, and we can certainly entertain thoughts people have on policy considerations at that point. So with that, Chief Mullen.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're going to hear me say the term LPR quite a lot, and that stands for license plate reader. So we're clear on that. So what the Flock camera system is an expansion of existing LPR technology we've been using for well over a decade. And what the Flock camera is, it's a traffic camera that's set up at a specific intersection, and it's taking a still photograph of a vehicle as it passes. And that's important to note, it's a still photograph, it's not a video. It's a still photograph of a vehicle going by. What that photograph captures is a license plate number, vehicle details such as make, model, color, any visible damage or alterations to the vehicle, and it's a timestamp and a location of where that vehicle was. It's important to note that the Supreme Court has ruled license plate readers, they aren't private information. Those are government-issued identification tags to identify a vehicle. And they've also said a vehicle traveling down a road is knowingly exposed. So there's no right to privacy when it comes to that. So what this what this is doing is capturing an image. And what it's important it's not capturing, they don't record speed, they do not track individuals or provide GPS movements. They're not taking a photo of the driver. It is merely a rear view of the vehicle and a close-up of the license plate. That's it. Now, the flock system is not connected in any way to Department of Motor Vehicles, so there's no way the flock system can access who owns that vehicle. There's no way for them to access that. What the flock system does is it will take that data and bounce up what's called off a vehicle hot list. There's a system known as the National Crime Information Computer System. It's called NCIC. So whenever we have a stolen vehicle, we'll take that vehicle information and we put it into NCIC as a vehicle hot list. So anytime a stolen vehicle goes by one of these cameras, it'll send an alert that, hey, you just had a stolen vehicle pass this camera. We are also able to run our own hot list. So if we're looking for somebody to check their well-being, if somebody's involved in a serious crime, we can input that vehicle information in there and be able to see if they pass by a camera at that point. So it's also important to note that with the flock system, there is no federal law enforcement access to these systems. We own the data, and we just determine who has access to our systems. Currently, we have 7 agencies in the state of Maine, all other municipalities that have access to the system, to include Lewiston, Falmouth, Scarborough, South Pole, and York, and Freeport. Those are the departments that have access to our data. And what they can do is they can input a vehicle if they're having an issue, and it'll ping off of all of the other systems to see if that vehicle has passed through Auburn. That's it. Any access from another agency, that has to be approved by me, and it's managed by our police analyst, who is our administrator for the system. So we're guaranteed there's no federal law enforcement access to this system whatsoever. Furthermore, this data is highly encrypted, living in the cloud, and they've not had any type of security breach within their system at all. And what's also important to note is that specific vehicle data captured by the system is protected from freedom of access requests. So somebody can't file a freedom of access request saying, I want to know if Jeff Harmon's plate passed through these license plate readers at any time. We can't do that. It's prohibited by Maine state law. Furthermore, Maine state law requires that our data is deleted every 21 days. So that image that's taken at that specific point in time stays in our system for 21 days, and then it's gone. We have the ability, the officers have the ability to run searches to see if a specific vehicle type has passed through a certain location. When the officers do that search request, they have to have a case number. They have to have a reason why they're doing it. And we run monthly audits on all of our searches to ensure that that policy is being followed. We have a very stringent policy regarding LPRs in place that we enacted before we deployed the system. So we have very stringent guidelines in place for how it's used, and we conduct monthly audits for that. One thing, we can provide aggregate data, so we can say there have been so many searches done within the month of April, and so many searches for stolen vehicles, so many searches for well-being. We're required to provide accurate aggregate data, but not specific data on a specific vehicle. And we deployed these in August of 2025. We've had 20 success stories so far using the systems. They vary from locating theft suspects from car dealerships, from some of our retail outlets, shoplifting, to locating an elderly person that was the subject of a well-being check by a neighboring agency. So we've had 20 success stories, and what the system's doing is using AI to go through this data and provide those searches for us, where it would take an officer 4 hours to look at a traffic camera, try to whittle down a specific date and time to try to find an image of that vehicle. And 9 times out of 10, our traffic cameras are not going to capture the license plate because they're just not positioned for that, nor are they equipped for it. Where a flock will take that data for us, and we're leveraging AI as a force multiplier to maximize our resources and able to conduct certain investigations.
Questions from the council? Council Randall.
Of your 20 success stories, do you have any that are not success stories?
We do not know.
Council Duval.
Two questions. First, National Crime Information System, you said that was just for stolen vehicles. Are there other?
If any time a vehicle is involved where it's put out as to be on the lookout for, say a stolen vehicle was used in a homicide in Massachusetts, that information gets uploaded into the National Crime Computer. If it's a vehicle that's tied to a specific violent crime, they can input that into the National Crime Computer. So anytime an officer runs that plate, it'll pop up as an NCIC hit, or if it passes by one of our cameras, we can get an alert saying this vehicle was just seen. It's the subject of an investigation from another state.
Second question is related. So did I hear you, I might have misheard you, say that you have to supply aggregate data?
If required by a FOIA request, aggregate data, so we're talking about totals, number of total searches.
Yeah. So that's only for a FOIA request?
Correct.
You would provide aggregate data?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Council Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was mentioned earlier that there's other type of cameras throughout the city. How many cameras do we have currently, and what types are they?
We have 12 traffic cameras located throughout the city at two major intersections, being Maine and Court here. We have, I think, four or five cameras monitoring that specific intersection. And the other one is in New Auburn at Mill and South Maine, Mill and Broad. And those are video cameras. Those are constantly recording. So we can go back and review that footage if we have a specific or general time. If we're looking for a specific vehicle, we can go back and look at that. But the flock cameras automate that function for us. So it saves officers from having to sit at a computer for 4 to 5 hours looking for a specific vehicle, where flock will do it in a matter of seconds for us.
You also have a camera over by what was called Mechanics Bank or Community Bank now?
No, I don't believe so.
Council Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I have two questions, kind of unrelated, but I'll ask them in succession anyway. The first is, have we had requests from federal agencies to access our data?
We have not, no.
We have not, no. And my second question, crap, what was my second question? It just escaped me.
We'll come back to you, Council Butler.
Are there other approaches that would achieve the same success?
Not that I'm aware of, because these cameras are utilizing AI, and as we look to AI to try to maximize our resources, I don't see other systems out there that are able to do it with the efficiency that this system does.
Since there is a fair amount of anxiety, I think, when a system like this is being utilized, you've answered this, I think, but I'd like to re-ask a couple of questions. One is, there's absolutely no facial recognition that's coming from the picture and the picture from behind the vehicle.
Correct.
It sounds like the technology has been helpful in cases like silver alerts or amber alerts.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about how, if there is someone on your kind of hot list and that car is identified, how that plays into the requirements for probable cause?
Certainly. So the officers, if they get that alert, they have to do a little bit more research as to why that vehicle is being sought after. Is it a confirmed stolen vehicle? They will run the plate and verify that it's in the NCIC list. Or it may be one of our cases where they can access the case and see exactly why that car is being sought. And traffic stops, you're required to have articulable suspicion. It's a little bit of a lower standard than probable cause. The officers need that articulable suspicion to be able to conduct that motor vehicle stop. They can't do it on the alert alone. They have to do a little bit more research to confirm there's actually an issue before they stop the car. And they have to have that articulable suspicion to do that.
And in this system, would you be able to just put in a person's name as opposed to a plate number?
No.
At all?
Council Platt.
I remembered. Thank you. Okay, my second question. So as I understand this system, AI is aiding immensely in the analysis
Correct.
of still photos, of data. I think, the concern that we're fielding from constituents, or at least that I am from constituents, is breach of privacy, stuff like that. So I want to understand, what were we using prior to this? What were license plate readers doing? Were they storing live feeds onto the cloud that could be breached and taken?
So what
Because
we were
I just want to
doing-
separate,
Sure.
is the new element here AI analysis of data that we've generally already had?
Yes.
Or
So-
is it the actual collection of data that is different?
In the previous systems that we've had, these were cameras that were mounted on the rooftops of our cruisers, and they were taking, again, still pictures of vehicles going by as they're going down the road. The previous systems, they would actually take that license plate, they would run that with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and it would pop up a flag, say that vehicle was suspended for tolls. We got an inordinate amount of alerts for vehicles suspended for tolls. We're not stopping those vehicles. So the previous systems were actually much more intrusive because they were connected to Department of Motor Vehicles, where this system is not as intrusive because there's no data. The only data they're collecting is the plate and the vehicle description. It's not connected to DMV. It's not running owner information. It has no access to be able to do that. The officer then has to take that initial step and run it on their mobile data terminal to see that information there if they have reason to do so.
So, and I say this not to defend or support Flock, but I want to make sure I'm making a accurate statement. Is it safe to say that these Flock cameras are not the first time as a municipality that we have mass collected data, stored it in some format or another?
That's correct.
And utilize that data
Yes.
to affect change?
As I said earlier, we've been using LPR technology for over 10 years. And when we first started, that was brought before council. They approved it with the use of CIP funding to be able to get that program off the ground.
Other questions by the council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to confirm, of those 20 success stories, your thoughts on whether, how many of those you may have been able to solve without this?
Probably not many of them because we're taking a small amount of information, such as we had a hit and run vehicle where they were able to describe the vehicle. That's it. They were able to take that vehicle description with no plate and upload it into the system, and based on the location of the accident, say, okay, you had this many vehicles that were matched that description passed through this camera. And then they were also able to know, oh, that vehicle's got right front end damage, which is consistent with the accident that we're investigating. We had another one where a stolen vehicle out of Massachusetts was wanted in connection with the strangulation of a 5-year-old child in Massachusetts. We located that vehicle as it was going through Auburn. ASO deputies were able to locate that vehicle and turn and make a vehicle stop on it. So what we're doing is we're taking a thread and pulling that thread, and AI is doing the work for us. And it's been very successful for us so far, and it's maximizing our resources.
Other questions from the council? Council Butler.
Is there an ongoing annual report on the success of this?
We can provide one as we come to the close of the year in August. Once it's been up and running for a year, we can do an annual report, sure.
Mr. Manager, did you have a comment?
Just to clarify, Councilor Gary asked a question regarding Elm and Minot Avenue. I think what you might be referring to is that we were the pilot location for red light camera system, and there was a camera at Elm and Minot Avenue because that was actually one of the highest red light running intersections in the state of Maine. So we were capturing a great deal of data. To Councilor Platz's question, all that was being stored. It was being run as a pilot. We had three locations.
We had 4 in Auburn and 2 in Lewiston.
So
this was back in 2003, 2004, where they were recording red light violations. I was the lieutenant overseeing the project, so I had to review. We averaged about 4,000 violations a month that I had to review each one, and they got sent a warning letter. And then we did a presentation to the legislature on the efficiency of them. However, if the legislator wanted to allow that, we would need to have some revenue sharing from the fines. And they turned around and outlawed photo enforcement as to answer that. So Jason Moner is responsible for photo enforcement not being allowed in Maine.
So, Chief, I've received many emails, calls, and texts about this, so you'll have to bear with me. I have quite a long series of questions here I want to ask to make sure that it's crystal clear to the public exactly what this system is and what it isn't. So you mentioned earlier NCIC, so just to make sure I'm clear, as the license plate number is read, a query against NCIC is run in real time to give alerts. Okay, so leave flock cameras aside a minute, and let's go back to when the city manager and I started in the law enforcement world when all this didn't exist, and I think these things still go on today, right? So when your officers are out on calls and they begin an investigation and they receive some information that someone's left the scene of a crime or it's a missing person or whatever, you mentioned BOLOs, be on the lookouts. That's routinely sent out today, right?
Sure.
It could, through LA 911, would notify the police officers in their cars. They would start looking for that, right? And that also might be sent out on what's called an all points bulletin or an APB through the state police metro system. That's been going on for over 50 years, where that same information would be sent out, made available to every law enforcement agency in the state, correct?
Yep.
And if you have something like that happens, would it be unusual for a police officer to pull over on the side of the road and watch traffic going by, trying to see if they can locate the vehicle that's the subject of a BOLO or an APB?
Correct, we do it all the time.
Yeah, so as an example, let's say Livermore Falls Police, that there's a robbery at the gas station and somebody says that they saw a vehicle fleeing the scene. It was a red, I'll use my vehicle, it was a red pickup truck with a cap on it, and they got 3 digits on the license plate, 264. That officer city might go and sit on the side of Center Street, right, and watch cars coming by if they were last seen heading south on Route 4 and observe the traffic, right? And they would visually watch these vehicles going by in the public space. And they would look at those vehicles, right, and they'd be observing them visually. And in their head, they would be saying, is that one a red pickup truck with a cap on it? Does it have 264 in the license plate? And they would be comparing that in their head against the APB or the BOLO that had come out from dispatch, correct?
Correct.
And there's no difference other than a piece of technology is doing this than that exact thing, right? The camera is like the police officer's eyes watching what goes by on the road, and AI is a substitution for the police officer's brain, is reading those visual images and saying, oh, this is a red pickup truck and it's got 264 in the license plate. It's comparing that against the BOLO that's been entered in the system by your officers, or if it's, say, a full license plate against NCIC. So do you see any actual difference in the function that's being provided other than it's being provided by a piece of equipment instead of a police officer on the side of the road?
Correct. There's no difference at all, and actually it's a force multiplier, because we have typically 4 officers working in the city, and we have 7 cameras. Those officers can't be at every location looking for them. So by simply, inputting that vehicle that they're looking for in there, it puts it out throughout the city. So we're not having an officer parked on the side of the street, because our officers listen to our neighboring agencies all the time. And if they hear something going on, they're going to go to that main street coming from that city to look for that vehicle. I'm a prime example of that. We had a violent kidnapping about 4 years ago, where a girl was kidnapped off the side of the road, and this was like 6 o'clock at night. And had we had LPR at the time, if we had the system at the time, we could have picked that vehicle up as it left the city. I was leaving the station at 2:30 in the morning to go home after we've done this investigation. I see the suspect vehicle going by me. I was able to turn around and initiate a traffic stop and get the girl out of the car. So For me, that was pure luck. I was in the right spot at the right time. These flock cameras are nothing but a force multiplier in enhancing that luck for us.
And when this officer might be sitting on the side of the road looking for my red pickup truck coming down from Livermore Falls, if they see an orange Dodge Charger that goes by, they might say, hey, that meets the description of the vehicle that at roll call yesterday, the sergeant told us in South Paris there was a criminal restraint by a parent, and the vehicle, the person's from Massachusetts, they may be in the central Maine area. When they see this vehicle go by with a Mass plate, they might stop it, right?
Sure.
And is that any different than the retention of the vehicles that go by for 21 days and they're able to check those later on?
No, sir, it's not. No difference.
I wanted to move on to some issues around privacy and security. So you mentioned the state statute, and I'm sure you're familiar with 29A MRSA 2117A, which is the state statute that regulates automated license plate readers.
Yes, sir.
And that statute, as a general law, outlaws automated license plate readers except for very narrow uses. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is one of those uses investigatory activity by police departments?
Yes, it is.
And you mentioned the 21-day retention period, and you're using 21 days because that's what's specified in Maine law, correct?
Correct, yes.
And if the police department or a vendor such as Flock violated that and used that data for something other than those very narrow law enforcement purposes, or retained that data longer than 21 days, they would in fact be committing a Class E crime in the state of Maine, for which you could be sentenced up to 6 months in the county jail. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And I've gotten lots of calls about people expressing their thought that they have a constitutional right to privacy when they're driving on the road. In Maine, you're familiar with 29A MRSA 452, display of license plates?
Yes, sir.
And would it be fair to say that in the state of Maine, you're legally required, if you're in a motor vehicle upon a public way, to display 2 license plates, one on the front and one on the rear, in an unobstructed manner that are visible to the public? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so, relative to your general comments before, the police department keeps up with new laws and appellate court decisions that could have impacts on the activities of your police officers.
Correct. We have annual mandatory training on new case law.
And you get the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin, and you get circulars from the AG's office and from the Maine Criminal Justice Academy.
You're starting to date yourself, Mr. Mayor.
But you get regular updates so that if there had been a change in law that was first established in 1967 that made it, extended a right of privacy to a vehicle that was legally required to display license plates driving on the road in Maine, you would be made aware of that and would adjust the practice of the police department?
Absolutely.
And then relative to the systems that you're using, it's my understanding that the Flock cameras are NDAA certified, the National Defense Appropriation Act, which governs the hardware that can be used in these cameras to prevent unauthorized access and hacking. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And when the images are captured and they're transmitted to the cloud, they're encrypted in transit utilizing the CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System security standards, correct?
Actually, it's more enhanced than that. They're using military-grade encryption for it. But yes, it's very heavily encrypted on transit.
And where it's stored in the cloud, the data storage and the computation takes place in Amazon Web Services GovCloud. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And GovCloud is CJIS certified and subject to audit by the FBI to ensure it's meeting all of the CJIS security standards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then I just wanted to reiterate, because one of the most predominant questions that I've received is about sharing this information with ICE, and I think you've fully explained who has access to this data.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fully within the control of the Auburn Police Department as to what other agencies you want to permit access to the case information that you put in the system, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So there's flock users all over the country, and if some, I don't know what particular agency, but some agency in Idaho is using flock, it's not accessing the data you put in the system because you've
restricted it.
You've restricted through permission settings in the application which agencies you allow to have access.
That's correct.
Great. I appreciate your patience and thank you very much for as I went through all of those questions. Further questions by the council? Councilor Randall.
So you're saying that the Auburn Police Department has the final say as to whether they're going to allow some government agency who may request information from us, whether we share it or not.
Yes, ma'am.
If you deny that request, does that then open the city of Auburn up to lawsuits?
It does not, because we own the data. There's no law or right to have to share that data.
Other questions by the council? Council Platt.
Just a quick comment. Without trying to say how this will end up from a budgetary conversation, I do think in the brief research I've done on Google and ChatGPT about Flock, it seems that most of the insecurities or the data breaches have to do with people getting phished for their logins or losing their passwords, things like that.
Right.
I would think that regardless of how this plays out, perhaps there's a need for just a deeper look at our policies around this. Sounds like you guys have a great policy. Policies can always be made tighter. Again, for my research, it seems like individuals losing their credentials are the biggest risk here. Again, I would think it's the same risk as the technology we had 10 years ago.
Right.
Anyone can get hacked in that regard. So for me, regardless of what happens in this budget conversation, I think perhaps we could put further efforts into what our policies look like from a municipal standpoint. I'm sure they exist to some extent already. So.
Yeah.
And Chief, to follow up on Council Platz's point, there's numerous systems that you access that has state and local data through the Metro and NCIC system that requires, has significant rules around authentication for those systems.
Correct.
Physical location where that can take place, who can access that, how often they have to change their passwords. All of that is audited. Every agency is audited on a triennial basis by the Maine State Police.
That's correct, and we actually have an audit coming up April 1st.
So I think Council Platts, it's fair for us to look at that, but I think there's already very robust rules.
We have stringent
around
safeguards in place already, coupled with
perhaps just educating the public to the fact that already exists is, I guess, my point.
Exactly. Other questions by the council? If not, if there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. No.
I just wanted to ask if
Well,
the system works.
can you come to the microphone so the people at home can hear you?
Sure. Oh, at home, yes. Does the system work? Ben Lounsbury, 505 West Auburn Road. Does the system work at night?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium. Representative Chapman, nice to see you tonight.
51 Eastman Lane, Auburn, Maine. So I find myself in a very peculiar position, very pro law enforcement. Used the cameras before. I have AI assistant on the cameras I use in a retail shop. I choose not to use the AI. My concern isn't so much where the data is, what we're doing with the data currently, it's just how it can expand. I know it's coming. I know we can't run from it. AI is here to stay. We're going to use it in every application. But I can't help but think in my mind, if we have another COVID incident where everybody's terrified, how we can police it. If we have another lockdown and I want to go get something to drink outside of my house, now I can be penalized by fine or any other way. And it sounds a little extreme, but I can picture it. I think you can too. It's coming, whether we like it or not, but if we could slow it down, that'd be good. That's my 2 cents. And again, pro-law enforcement, and I found myself partnered with the ACLU of all. I mean, me, ACLU, but we're in agreement on this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Stephen Beal, still at 575 Johnson Road. I strongly support the chief's position in turn in support of this technology. Boiled down to its essence, all that this is a more efficient way of doing what we've been doing by other electronic means for a decade or more, which is in practice throughout the country in a variety of fashions. The standard that both the chief and the mayor have referred to in a Supreme Court case is whether one has a reasonable expectancy of privacy in a particular setting. And here, consider the facts. These are public roads built with public money. The vehicles are registered via the state of Maine. The vehicles are inspected to state of Maine standards by private body shops or inspection facilities. And the driver is a licensed driver, licensed by the state of Maine. Those are all public functions. There's nothing private about the exterior of a vehicle. I asked the chief before the meeting how many officers it would take him to achieve the same efficiencies as these cameras do. He couldn't make an exact estimate because it's just too difficult to contemplate, but it's a lot. And hiring police officers is a very significant budget factor. The policemen are not overly compensated, but the training and the equipment and facilities take a lot of money. So in this situation, this has not been deemed by many courts to be an improper search. It's not a search to look at the outside of a vehicle. There's no penetration of any rays of any kind, any electronic media, to the interior of the vehicle. It doesn't affect the individual person's activities within the vehicle. A much more intrusive police function, which is done regularly without objection, is on periodic times throughout the year when there are mass traffic stops completed on various public ways. July 3rd in the evening, everybody's winding up for a weekend, and police officers routinely take several officers to stop every vehicle in a line of traffic, have them roll down the window, take a deep sniff, and there's a lot of arrests made under that passage, which is far more intrusive than looking at the outside of a vehicle on a public way with an electronic device assisted by AI. The other final point is AI here is just aiding the efficiency of the process. It's not doing any analysis. It's not making the judgment as to whether or not this is a defensible activity or whether the person really did commit a crime. That's for courts to determine. This is just providing the information about parties that have suspects characteristics that have already been created in some other setting, i.e. a car in Massachusetts or somebody running down Route 4 from Livermore Falls. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's any other member of the public, please approach the podium, provide your name and address.
My name is Fred Broder. I live at 83 6th Street in Auburn. My concern is that bad actors coming in to hack the system, including the federal government, and or a flock camera or somebody pressuring any of those groups to release the information. I trust the people here to do the right thing, but breaches of security could really cause some real problems, especially where there's, actions against the democracy, where the government doesn't follow the Congress, doesn't follow the law, doesn't follow judicial orders. So I'm really concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public like to address the council on this item? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, we'll close public comment and return to the council. Representative Edwards.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just like one last time, do you feel that this would genuinely protect our community from what you've seen so far?
Yes, I do.
Any other discussion by the council? Councilor Randall.
This information was wonderful. I appreciate you coming in and clearing the air. I still have my I still have my reservations about it.
Okay.
But thank you.
I'd be willing to follow up with you to discuss those if you'd like.
Other questions by the council? Councilor Duvall.
Yeah, I want to second that. So this has been really helpful. Thank you, Chief Moe. Really appreciate it. I trust Auburn. I trust the state of Maine. I get more worried when things get put into a database that they have to go away after 21 days. Totally get it. But, and that's a good safeguard. My concern remains the fact that the data go out though we own it, they go out of our hands and they remain out of our hands off-site on Amazon Web Services for 21 days, so.
Just remember, Council, that there's no private information being transmitted.
Totally understood.
Any other comments from the council? Councilor Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just kind of out of curiosity, 21 days, that's part of the statute for the state of Maine. Of the use so far, which is limited, it's less than a year, when you've had these success stories, how far out, how many days out?
Usually within a couple of days.
So potentially, if there was discussion we wanted to think about from a policy standpoint, we could potentially shorten those days on our regs and change that in the systems?
Potentially, yes. I would want more discussion on it.
Oh, absolutely. But you have control over that in terms of.
Representative Edwards.
Sorry, I'm asking another question, but we talked about the federal government, but is the State Bureau of Motor Vehicles getting any of this data?
No, they're not.
And just to be clear, for those that are concerned about other agencies, there's nothing to prevent any federal agency from putting any type of technology up that they're authorized to use, whether they tell the City of Auburn and the Auburn Police Department about it or not.
That's kind of something I've been thinking about, and I appreciate this conversation from all participants. I just want to make sure if we're kind of heading towards that segment of the argument where we're saying we don't trust technology, where people could hack it. Okay, but let's extend that to every piece of technology we have in the city, because this is not the only. And I want to be clear, I'm not just defending Flock. I don't know much about it other than what I've learned here. But you guys have heard me over the last couple of years, I'm a big proponent of parity and being fair in the conversation. We can't scapegoat one thing and not talk about others. So that's fine. But if we're talking about things getting hacked, let's get Jill Cunningham back up here and ask about every system that has a vulnerability in the city. Again, this was different. We're talking about citizens. We're talking about citizens transiting through our city. So I get that. This one's a little different. But we're on the doorstep of a can of worms here, so I just want to be careful there.
Yeah, to follow up on that, having lots of experience with AWS GovCloud when I was in the private sector, and having many criminal justice agencies around the country that we provided services for, if one thinks that what you have on premise in the city of Auburn is more secure than AWS GovCloud, you're sadly mistaken. If you use an appropriate cloud service with appropriate standards, and like with AWS GovCloud that has actual auditing for compliance, it's likely far more secure than what municipalities have in their own buildings because of the scale that they operate at and the expertise that they can employ to provide these advanced security measures. Mr. Manager? Sorry. Oops, I'm sorry.
Just to add to that, I would suspect that systems like that also can keep up with the always changing threats, but far better than we would be able to.
Councilor Randall?
To follow up on your comment about the federal government can come in and put other surveillance items in the city of Auburn and not even tell us, if something were to happen and bad actors got into the system, that would be on the federal government, not on us, the people who are supposed to be protecting the constituents of our city, the people who elected us to be here representing them.
Councilor Duvall, did you have follow-up?
Oh, I just wanted to reiterate a point that Councilor Platts made earlier about social engineering actually being the way hacking happens. And so I think, the technical hack is not actually the weakness. It's always the people. And
city staff undergo training to prevent that type of thing with social engineering and whatnot. City staff goes under training to make sure that they're aware of those social engineering hacks and whatnot and how to prevent them.
Understood.
In alignment just with the feedback on social media, if I'm not mistaken, there are lots of cameras that we're all interfacing with on a regular basis in our neighborhoods with door cameras, on cars with dash cameras. Each of those have cloud storage as well. And I'm guessing, but it'd be nice to hear some verification that the system this is stored in has some higher level security than what I might find at my neighbor's door or
Absolutely,
car.
yes.
Yeah, great point. That's what I was going to mention as we start kind of peeling back all these different layers. I think Council Platts made a good point regarding, cyber threats. We meet probably once a month with the IT director, Dennis, and I. Just our biggest conversation is regarding where do we have vulnerabilities regarding our cyber threat, and because we also have cameras on our school buses, and so probably a larger presentation about, as I've been sitting here thinking about, where else do we have this technology? I know the IT director has that all laid out. We probably have, just a guess, but we're probably between 800 and 1,000 cameras in the city that we regulate, because every one of our schools, every corridor, every back door, those cameras are facing outward, but they're also facing inward. So we have a great deal of technology that we're leveraging every day. So maybe a larger presentation would be helpful, and we'll start gearing that up for a future workshop.
Any final comments by the council? Council Butler.
I just want to go back to the concept of an annual report and maybe looking at that, maybe as we're hearing a lot of feedback on this particular topic, being able to have that a little more frequently with success stories, maybe with our breaches, if there's other authorized permissions, just as a check-in.
As a reminder, if any of you get an email saying that the mayor really needs your help to go get him some gift cards or anything else, that's a cyber threat. But we get them every couple weeks, so just so we're clear. It's a good reminder.
Councilor Randall.
I know that we're having this discussion based on the flock cameras due to needing funding. And a lot of my holdup is about the funding, because we have a very, very tight budget that we're working with. And we're going to have to make, some calls maybe about not funding certain things. And I just wonder how important these cameras, specific cameras, are for the police department to have. That's my first part of the question. The second part of the question is, are there ongoing subscription services that we need to pay for? How often do they need to be updated? How often are we going to be asked for more money for these particular cameras?
So I appreciate the questions. I have some of the exact same questions. I think we should defer that until we're talking about that piece of the budget. I think they're very fair questions to ask, but I think let's have that when we get to that budget item. Any final thoughts from the council? I appreciate the members of the public coming in and the discussion from the council. As we go forward on this, this will, I believe, Mr. Manager, this will be an IT line?
That's correct.
Yes, so when we get to the IT line, we'll have a discussion about the potential funding and prioritization. But hopefully this has been helpful to the members of the council and the public to make sure they understand exactly what is happening with the system that we're using here in Auburn. Chief, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, folks.
I appreciate it. We'll move on to reports. A few items. So I hosted a couple budget town hall meetings, one last Thursday evening and one Saturday afternoon. I appreciate Councilor Walker and Councilor Butler and Councilor Cowan came by, had some great discussions with members of the public, lots of Q&A about how the budget works. Reminding everyone there's a public forum tomorrow evening regarding mobile home parks and rent stabilization. So again, that's tomorrow, March 17th. It'll be at 5:30 p.m. at the Senior Center. There'll be a presentation by the Office of Policy Innovation in the Future and Maine Housing about what's happening at the state level regarding this issue. And then we'll have an opportunity for members of the public to share their thoughts with us and ask questions. Comp plan meetings coming up. The next two are Thursday, March 19th and Tuesday, March 24th. Both are at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. There's two meetings during the course of the month instead of one. The committee's trying to finalize the growth zones and land use characteristics, and finalize in this sense means finalized to prepare it to go out for public review and comment. There's a Safe Voices Grown-Up Book Fair Friday, March 20th at the Hilton Garden Inn, which should be a great event. If swing by if you want to support Safe Voices. And reminding everyone that next Monday night, the 23rd at 5:30 here in the council chambers, it's an off week for a council meeting, but we will be continuing with budget workshops. With that, Councilor Geary?
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Randall?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilor Cowan?
Just if anyone wants to come tomorrow morning at 9:30 to 11, we have a Auburn Homelessness Committee meeting. It's at 121 Mill Street.
Councilor Duvall?
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Butler?
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Walker?
Nothing, sir.
And Councilor Platt?
I would like to report that the Auburn School Department budget presentations have begun. At the last meeting, the budget was presented. I'll just give you guys a quick overview. But as presented, the expense budget was an increase of 5%, from 64 million to 64.5 million to 67.6. I will say they report their debt service in that number, so I'd like to pull that out because I know we don't. I think when you pull that debt service out, I think the increase is about 7%. But I'll confirm that number. We went through the first several cost centers last week as well. If anybody's interested, feel free to tune in to the videos or ask me any questions. Again, the premise of the school budget is the same as the city budget. There's no new services, no new headcount, and it's really driven by health insurance. It's driven by increases to special education costs, and it's driven by transportation. Those are the three major cost centers. There is attention being paid to a bill. The mayor could probably tell me the exact number of the LD, but LD something or other up in Augusta, which could change the funding formula for one component of school funding. It's not all of it. There are hopes that for municipalities such as Auburn, fitting the characteristics such as Auburn, there could potentially be benefits in the revenue funding model. That's not built into the budget, though. That's more of just a fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. So,
yeah, and to follow up on that last point, I don't recall the LD off the top of my head, but this is This is a bill that the Maine Mayor's Coalition, the City of Auburn, I know that both on the city side and on the school side have been supporting. What is it? ED 279. So the issue, this is really an equity bill, and it allows some changes in the formula related to the percentage of students in poverty, cost of special education, some minor changes to ESL. The whole premise behind this is that it costs more to educate disadvantaged students than students that don't have those challenges. And with the current formula, the way this is rolled out over the years, some of the more wealthy school districts are actually now getting more money per student through general purpose aid education than cities like, Auburn, Lewiston, Biddeford. The most recent analysis, if this bill passed as it was, if this had been in place this year, the general purpose aid to education in Auburn would have gone up over $900,000. So this is a really important bill, and we'll continue to support this as it goes through the legislature. Representative Edwards.
So today was the first day of March Madness at EL, but I was honored to be on Absolutely Auburn, but I think that's all I have to share for this time.
Thank you. You did a great job, by the way. Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So the LD is 226. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So the legislative process is winding down. This is the time to really be paying attention. Sometimes that 11th hour is where certain things happen. And so I think between the Mayor's Coalition and also the Maine Service Center Coalition, we are monitoring every bill. We're probably communicating daily, even over the weekends, because there's hearings that we might be getting some feedback, or there's a change in the schedule regarding a hearing that's coming up Monday, and we want to make sure we get testimony in. The Maine Service Center Coalition did submit testimony in support of the LD 2226, which is the EPS funding formula. And we're also submitting testimony in support of funding regarding the jails. So the jails, at some point, the state had set the funding at 20%, but it was for that year. And so every year after that, as the budget changed, the formula is back to the 20% of that funding amount, and it has not changed. So the bill that's going forward is that would adjust that. That would be a great benefit for our county tax, and because that's the major driver in that 13% increase within the county tax was regarding jail funding. So we'll continue to watch these bills as they come through, making sure that we're providing testimony either written or in person. We do that frequently as well, and we'll continue in that process. Other than that, the Councilor Platts mentioned regarding school budget. So I'm meeting regularly with the superintendent. We're actually meeting tomorrow. Dennis, Kelsey, myself, Scott, and Air, and the superintendent to discuss their debt service. So we'll have that number. We'll make sure that's available. And I believe Councilor Platts will have it tomorrow night at the meeting so that they can discuss that further. And we're also meeting internally. As we get feedback, as we work through the workshops, we're going back and we're pivoting and we're having conversations with the directors as well. If you want to see something different in the presentations, be sure to let us know. We'll get into more detail as we have more discussions with you, but we'll take that information and we'll make adjustments as needed. That's it, Mayor.
Great, thanks very much. We'll now open up public comment in the second open session of the evening. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on an item not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session's closed. There's no executive session scheduled for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councilor Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Butler. All those in favor? The council will be adjourned.